a few years ago, I was visiting a friend in Sweden, and I was making small talk with her mother, and she asked me if I had any syskon, which I thought meant cousins, and I said, yeah, I have 2 here in Sweden, lots more in Ireland, and she said, oh, how many? And I said, well, I mean, there's all my dad's side in Belfast, there's Canada, I said, too many to count, really, and she looked a bit confused, but we moved on. And it was only when I got home that I realised that syskon doesn't mean cousins at all. It actually means siblings. And my friend's mother had been, the sort of typically polite Swede, but obviously reckoned that everything she'd heard about Catholic Ireland was true after all. Anyway, later in college, I did a degree in biochemistry, and I edited the student newspaper. And both of these endeavours sort of try to make some approach at getting at the truth, but inevitably they get things wrong all the time. In the paper, I wrote and published that the Literary Society were hosting a boob club next Tuesday. All welcome. That was supposed to be a book club. So 4 reasons that we get things wrong. One is our imperfect senses. Optical illusions prove this. We'd like to trust our sensory perception of the world, but you just can't. Here, squares A and B are the same shade of grey. And it really doesn't look like that. The reason why is that your brain is sort of adding your understanding of shadow and your memory of checkerboard patterns to the visual input to form a mental image. And this kind of slightly incorrect interpretation of sensory perceptions might be what leads 90% of amputees to suffer from phantom limb pain. And some of them will report that their missing hand is painfully clenched for years. And this is being treated now with mirrors. You put a mirror beside the remaining hand or limb, and they can see the missing limb on the other side of the body, and it relieves their pain. And the US Army is using this to treat amputee soldiers in all of its medical centres in the US. This is the doctor who pioneered it on the right. Bloody-mindedness, another reason we get things wrong. We don't assess new information neutrally at all. We assess it in light of whatever other beliefs we've acquired up to now. And new information, far from correcting our misbeliefs, can actually entrench us in the wrong answers. So, nice study on this. 2 groups were given a news article quoting Bush saying there was a real risk that Iraq had WMD before the invasion. And for another group, the article continued with this Julfer report's conclusion that it didn't. And then both groups were asked if they agreed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction before the invasion. And for liberals, the correction worked as you'd expect. But for conservatives, it backfired. The conservatives who read the correction were more likely to think that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction after reading this information. People around us make us wrong. We rely on people for information. It allows us to acquire experiences and information we couldn't do firsthand. And we like people who believe the things we do, and we build communities around people who believe the same things. But it leads to mistakes as well. Nice 1950 study on this. Groups of people were asked which line, A, B, or C, is the same length as the line on the other card. And in controls, error rate is about 1%. It's not a difficult task. It's clearly C. But when you load the group with actors who intentionally give the wrong answer, the error rate jumps from 1% to 37% as people align their answers with the consensus of the group. Then the last reason we get things wrong is just guesswork. We're really quick to just guess an answer to a question based on what we reckon is most probable based on what we've experienced up to now. But the thing is, it doesn't feel like guessing. It feels like you're absolutely certain about this. And 1,000 Illinois residents were asked their opinions on social welfare. And it turned out everybody was pretty much uninformed about this. But the least informed people were the most confident about their opinions of social welfare. And this kind of guessing is really commonplace, widespread way that we think. And children, when they learn language, sort of guess what's the most likely way that the words worked. And they say things like thinked and bringed and runned, which are obviously mistakes. But it works out in the end. Eventually, they'll get it right. And that's the thing with all these sources of error. Edward Adelson, who came up with the optical illusion you saw, said that it demonstrates the success rather than the failure of the visual system. It's not supposed to be a light meter. It's supposed to perceive the nature of objects. And that's true of all these sources of error. The way we think works really well. And I mean, this evening is a testament to how well the way we think works. Maybe not in spite of all these reasons for error, maybe because of them. They allow us to rapidly theorize about the world, to be intuitive, to learn from other people. And all those things are really why we've been able to achieve everything that we have so far. Thank you very much.